Grandpa Giraffe Shawn, will you tell us a story from when you were our age?
Oh, I'd be happy to. Anything for my dear old grandkids. Let's see. So there I was, crawling along the ledge of a 30-story building as I grabbed onto a pipe, scaling down the side in pursuit of this massive, burly alien that was stalking the city, and
Dad, that wasn't you. That was Danny Glover in Predator 2. Wait, you weren't even born when that movie came out. How about something a little more lighthearted for the kids? Maybe from your days as a newscaster?
Oh, my days as a newscaster. Those were the days. Hey, did you kids know that back when your daddy was little, Dusk Flicks wasn't the only place where you could watch TV?
Really?
Oh, yeah. We had this thing called cable, and there was even other streaming services. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Ladies and gentlemen, breaking news. Reports are flying in about some massive updates in the recent possible acquisition of Warner Bros. By none other than their longtime Hollywood rival, Paramount Pictures. What does this mean for the future of streaming? What does this mean for the future of Warner Bros.' entire content library? And then, a follow-up to a story about Cartoon Network's catalog of classic cartoons spanning decades being added to Tubi, the free streaming service? That can't be right. It's free, and they added all this stuff? Oh wow, what a good deal. Last week, we hit you with a report showing a ton of shows that were expected to be added either in waves or all at once. How many of these shows made the cut? Are there more expected to be added? We'll be diving into these questions and more on the third ever broadcast of Sunday News with Giraffe Shawn. At the top of the hour, we have reports coming in of an official announcement made on behalf of Paramount after months of rumors and a rather slippery back and forth between the massive corporation and fellow media gargantuan Netflix regarding who will be acquiring the long-standing Hollywood pillar known as Warner Bros. Discovery. For years now, Warner Bros. Has been known for what this cartoon giraffe on the internet considers questionable financial decision-making. Between scrapping massive completed projects like the Wile E. Coyote vs. Acme movie or the recently scrapped Batgirl movie, all in the name of tax write-offs, as well as laying off a substantial amount of employees and still incurring $45 billion in debt along the way, it's no secret that Warner Bros. Discovery, and specifically CEO David Zaslav, has been under quite a bit of public scrutiny. Many would argue rightfully so. In the wake of this massive financial dumpster fire, the company would be put up for sale, effectively hoping to be acquired by one of their peers and creating an even bigger monopolization on the entertainment industry than had already been established. Thus came the bidding war. Companies like Netflix and Comcast would eye purchasing the WBD umbrella. However, just after it seemed as if the former had been preemptively announced the winner of the bidding war, offering right about $28 per share, beating an offer from Paramount at about $27 per share, things would come to a grinding halt for a couple reasons. A big one being that Netflix and Comcast were mainly interested in the studio itself and the streaming assets, not the entirety of the Warner Bros. Discovery arsenal, which itself includes many cable channels including news outlets like CNN, lifestyle networks such as HGTV and the Food Network, and many entertainment networks such as Investigation Discovery and even Cartoon Network. Up-and-coming streaming platform Dusk Flicks, on the other hand, would have been the first one with their foot in the door, offering a whopping 25 cents per share before anyone else had even thought about putting in a bid. But unfortunately, the representatives at Warner Bros. Discovery wouldn't even answer their emails or phone calls. As the dominoes would fall, however, the offer from Netflix would fall through and Paramount would be the massive corporate entity chosen to swallow whole and digest the fragile remnants of Warner Bros. The final offer would come near $31 per share of the company and an additional nearly $46 billion total in equity, summing to a staggering $110 billion compared to Netflix, who had only offered a deal right around $72 billion. This massive transaction is set to close somewhere within the third quarter of 2026, dependent upon shareholder approval and clearance of all regulatory bodies. Of course, there are still a lot of hurdles to overcome, and the effects won't be immediately felt by the consumer if this deal does end up finalized. But what does this actually mean? What will the world of entertainment look like with the entirety of Warner Bros. Discovery, Paramount, and Skydance all under the same umbrella? Well, first of all, the moment this deal is finalized, a metaphorical vault of content has been created. We will see the likes of SpongeBob SquarePants and the rest of Nickelodeon existing among the amazing world of Gumball and the rest of Cartoon Network. We'll see Paramount, the company who used to distribute the Marvel movies like Thor and Iron Man back in the day, now being the owner of the entire DC cinematic universe. Many of the most popular show and movie IPs would now belong under the same corporate umbrella, including a ton of active and ongoing productions such as It, Welcome to Derry on HBO Max. Which begs the question, how will this change things going forward? Odds are, many of these current productions could be rather safe, having a developed cast, crew, and story already established. The future of movie production and the Hollywood ecosystem as a whole, however, is definitely going to be subject to a massive ongoing change that will likely take years to see the full effects. We're talking everything from actual production to financing these productions all the way to the release and decision to go to theatrical or just dump the project straight to a streaming service. Speaking of streaming though, what does this actually mean for Paramount Plus and HBO Max, two of the biggest streaming platforms on the block currently? Well, in a call with investors on Monday, March 2nd, Paramount Skydance CEO David Ellison went on record saying that the plan is to merge the two streaming services into one massive service that offers the comprehensive libraries of both streaming services. Quote, "We do plan to put the two services together, which today gives us a little over 200 million direct-to-consumer subscribers," the CEO said. "We think the combined offering, given the amount of content and what we can do from the tech side, really will put us in a position to be able to compete with the most scaled players in the streaming market," in reference to competitors like Netflix, who boast a massive 325 million global subscribers. Now, first things first, for me, there's one massive question that comes to mind. How exactly did they calculate that 200 million subscribers? Is that considering the likely huge amount of people who already have a subscription to both services and won't technically count as two separate customers under this new corporate umbrella? That overlap could be pretty substantial. However, in looking at it, in early 2026, it was reported that HBO Max had an impressive 132 million subscribers worldwide, while Paramount Plus reported about 79 million near the end of 2025. Looking at it that way, sure, that a little over 200 million could be factoring in people that already have both services. If there are 211 million people total between the two services, that figure given by the CEO could be operating on an understanding that 11 million of those people already have both of them, which would bring the total of users for the new streaming service to right about 200 million, assuming all of those people keep their accounts. On that note though, how will this work? I mean, HBO Max and Paramount Plus operate on completely different price points. If someone only has the bare minimum Paramount Plus subscription, are they going to be immediately grandfathered into the lowest subscription of the new streaming platform regardless of what the price point is? Could they legally just sign all 200 million of these individual accounts automatically up for their new combined service because they've already subscribed to one of them? Overall, it's kind of a messy situation that's far above my pay grade, and I'm honestly happy that I'm not the cartoon giraffe on the internet who's responsible for that choice. In this call, he went on to say, quote, "Our view is that HBO should stay HBO. HBO is a crown jewel in this business. It will continue to have the resources and independence to do what it does best." Clearly stating his position that HBO as a network and production company will still continue despite HBO Max now being a thing of the past. However, he did go on to add a bit of an amendment to that statement, stating, quote, "At the same time, we believe in licensing our content to other platforms and producing third-party content in our television studios. We are committed to growing our studios and the popular shows that they create," which itself is a bit of an unclear statement. However, with it being related to licensing, that can only mean one thing. HBO productions could find themselves eventually licensed to competitor streaming services such as Netflix, which honestly would be kind of ironic. Ultimately though, in the long run, the CEO expressed interest in keeping things on the production side as close to business as usual as possible, stating that he plans to keep Paramount Pictures and Warner Bros. As two separate movie studios. However, with one massive change of increasing their output to about 15 films per year. Considering that Paramount only released 8 films last year and Warner Bros. Was only able to manage 11, for each studio to push out 15 would be a huge endeavor. Let's just hope that they maintain the confidence to actually release these projects instead of completely scrapping them upon completion for a tax write-off and fear that they won't perform as well as corporate executives hope they will. Outside of the movie industry and the streaming ecosystem, concerns have also been flowing in regarding how this is going to affect major networks, primarily news outlets such as CNN. Last year, when Paramount acquired fellow media company Skydance, the CEO would appoint media executive Barry Weiss to head CBS News, and it wouldn't be long before public scrutiny would come her way, as she would be the one ultimately responsible for pulling and censoring news stories due to political bias, with some internal reports that it was, quote, "not an editorial decision, but a political one." Which, of course, I think we can all agree that when your job as a network is to report nothing but the facts, yet personal political ties end up coming between the truth and the public, well, that's practically the definition of state-controlled media. It doesn't matter what dumb political party you pledge allegiance to if it stands in the way of bringing factual news to the masses when that's your job. That's kind of a problem. Period. As that pertains to the merger between Paramount and Warner Bros., however, a lot of fears are spreading right now rooted in a similar thing happening to CNN. Many are worried that the CEO will swoop in and turn the operation over on its head, similar to what was done last year with CBS News. However, only time will tell if that's actually going to be the case or not. Interestingly enough, the story really is a reaching one, however, considering it bleeds into your daily entertainment and streaming experiences, the careers of many who work for these massive companies, politics and the overall media landscape, and even sports and entertainment. One of the biggest entities that's expected to see a huge win from this acquisition is none other than the National Football League. For context, this massive merger of Paramount and Warner Bros. Would see unlikely pairings such as CBS Sports and TNT Sports, which, as a result, would birth a huge sports venture between the NFL, MLB, NHL, the Masters, NCAA hoops, and football, among many other properties and leagues. Murmurs online are saying that the resulting company will undoubtedly rival ESPN in its stature. Of course, as it pertains to the NFL, it all boils down to the renegotiation of contracts with the highly sought-after TV rights. And it's no surprise that the NFL understands just how much weight that they hold. Everyone wants to be the home of the NFL, and the company itself is clearly open to seeing just how much money that they can get. Seeing as they've already done random one-off deals with the likes of Netflix for Christmas Day doubleheaders, they've experimented with how interacting with different distribution platforms could benefit them, and I don't think anyone is surprised to hear that they're already in talks as it pertains to where the rights are going to go when the current NFL deal comes to an end. Considering how aggressive Paramount approached this acquisition of Warner Bros. As it was competing with other bidders, there's a high likelihood that the juggernaut could find itself in yet another bidding war for a deal with the NFL. Again, only time will tell how that plays out. As this story is developing, we've also caught recent reports of things already going downward for Paramount in the face of this acquisition. Things aren't even finalized and approved yet, and already one of Wall Street's biggest credit rating agencies has downgraded Paramount's debt to junk status and cut its issuer default rating. To kind of make the easiest comparison as possible, you know how when you amass a debt that you don't pay off, it makes your credit go down and it lowers your approval odds for like loans and many other things? Yeah, Paramount hasn't amassed that debt yet, but just the idea of them taking on the amount of debt that Warner Bros. Has apparently immediately made Paramount's credit tank. Apparently, they were officially downgraded to the junk territory of speculative grade investment, i.e. be careful of investing money in this company because there's no way of knowing if you'll make a good return, or any return. Or maybe you'll just lose your money, who knows. On top of that, all of their ratings were placed on Rating Watch Negative, meant to hint that further downgrades may be on the horizon for the company. Furthermore, some massive concerns are flowing in from exactly where the funds for this merger are coming from. It turns out that a massive $24 billion of these funds being used for the acquisition are from sovereign wealth funds based out of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. These massive joint investments are considered a powerful move that directly coincides with efforts to build local entertainment industries across the Middle East. Which, obviously, entertainment industries in the Middle East aren't the issue at hand. The issue is whether an entity owning $24 billion stake in a massive company can be passive while maintaining control over news outlets and one of the most powerful lists of IPs in Hollywood. Paramount has gone on record saying that the investors won't receive any governance rights, board seats, or voting rights, but even then there's still concerns being voiced, namely by Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos, saying that, quote, they are from a part of the world that is not very big on the First Amendment. It seems very odd to me with the level of investment that we're talking about that they'd have no influence or editorial control over media in another country. Which, to be fair, is kind of a valid point. In the United States, freedom of speech is a massive thing, and it's something that plays a huge role in media, from movies all the way to music and video games. When multiple entities that believe in the exact opposite of freedom of speech hold such a large stake in the company that produces a majority of entertainment that Americans consume, there's reasonable room to hold at least a bit of apprehension. Neil Quilliam, a Middle East analyst based out of London, expanded on the topic at hand, saying, quote, they may be sleeping partners, but there will probably come a time when they're gonna wake up and want to exert their influence. Key word there though, probably. It's important to recognize that these fears are rooted in speculation. No one has actually, come out and declared intent to exert any influence, though those who intend to do so oftentimes don't openly declare it. New York-based lawyer and analyst Irina Sukerman went on record saying, quote, big sovereign investors negotiate the level of visibility they want into strategy and major decisions. They automatically get ongoing access to leadership and leverage tied to future financing even without publicly acknowledged voting rights. Which, in and of itself, is a pretty solid point. I mean, there's power in money. Even if someone isn't actually holding a position of power, the fact that they hold so much of an economy by default gives them room to exert power through purchase. Of course, this also brings to mind the recent murmurs about an acquisition of EA Games by Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, which caused massive tensions within the gaming industry in the Madden, Battlefield, and Sims communities, among others. On top of that, living in a day and age where Disney is actively building their first amusement park in the Middle East, it's safe to say at the end of the day, despite differences in culture and beliefs, money is the one true commonality that can bring nearly any greedy room of executives closer to one another. Much like many of the other points made here, only time will tell if this has any effect on the media that we are spoon-fed from these massive companies. Another interesting happening to develop since the inception of this story is Warner Bros. CEO David Zaslav selling $114 million worth of his company's stocks just days before this deal was announced of entering finalization. Granted, he still holds quite a bit of stock in the company going forward. When the actual merger of these giants does go through, his net worth is going to be over $1 billion. Interestingly enough, despite nearly driving Warner Bros. Into the ground in my opinion with what I consider to be terrible financial decisions and garnering the company massive amounts of debt, Zaslav remained one of the highest paid executives in the entire industry. In 2024, his pay package was raised by 4.4% to a huge $51.9 million. Only for it to be called into question 1 year later when stockholders came out against the pay packages of both him and other executives for the company, which ultimately led to his pay being substantially cut and him being offered a contract worth a solid amount less than what was originally negotiated. To be honest, I don't have an exact number, but from what I did read, it was a base of like $3 million per year with a bunch of other performance-based and stock-based incentives on top, the totals of which started to get overwhelming, and honestly, I'm no financial guru. The man is apparently making a lot less, and that's the point. With that in mind, the fact that he just sold off such a massive amount of his stock doesn't necessarily bode well in my opinion. If this deal was expected to go well, you'd imagine that stock prices would just increase, right? So if he was confident about it, he would want to hold? But whether it be Paramount's tanking credit and investment uncertainty, or maybe personal financial struggle as a result of docked pay and allegedly terrible financial decisions from a business perspective, in my opinion, it's clear that even the executives are getting cold feet about the future as it pertains to this specific deal. The uncertainty here absolutely trickles down just as much as the economics do, however, as even some talent who currently live under the umbrella of Warner Bros. Are expressing distaste at this merger. In a recent episode of Last Night Tonight on HBO, host John Oliver expressed some extreme opposition to the idea of Paramount being the new overseer of his show. However, this isn't necessarily anything new for Oliver. As a matter of fact, last September, when murmurs of this merger were already starting to appear, he voiced concern that if Paramount was the new owner of HBO, they could be thrust into a more traditional broadcast structure, requiring them to be mindful of FCC oversight and regulatory pressure, which has never really been a concern for premium cable networks like HBO. As far as the future of the entertainment industry goes, though, everything just feels like it's purely up in the air. Right now, a lot of these huge questions are just kind of fuel on the speculative fire, and it's only a matter of time until we truly see how all of this plays out and affects each of us on a personal level. However, one thing that does bring comfort and a bit of stability in these trying times is knowing that so many of our beloved childhood shows will still have a solid and stable home while this merger takes place in none other than Tubi. Who again is not a sponsor. Just for clarity, they don't give me money. I do not even have an account with them. I just watch the stuff for free on my TV. And yeah, again, they are not a sponsor of this show. I just kind of like Tubi. Last week, we discussed a list of nearly 100 different cartoons from the backlog of Cartoon Network and Warner Bros. In general, all of which were expected to hit the platform on March 1st. However, after that initial announcement, it was reported that a lot of these could be hitting in waves instead, with the first wave coming on March 1st. Well, as March 1st came and went, we got our first wave of new content from this old library to hit Tubi, and while it isn't all of the shows that we were expecting, they did end up adding quite a few very prominent titles to their lineup. We're talking the Powerpuff Girls, Ben 10, the OG Teen Titans, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Codename Kids Next Door, What's New Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo Where Are You, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Tasmania, and honestly, I think there's more than that I haven't stumbled upon yet. However, one aspect that's eating me up inside, if I'm being honest, is that upon opening this app, I couldn't help but notice one huge glaring red flag. For some reason, Dexter's Lab, which mind you was on the list, is actually already on Tubi. But for some reason it's showing up under the Leaving Soon tab. Now, I'm not sure if this is a mistake or if the show was already on Tubi and is leaving as these new shows are going. However, if this really is the case, it's a bit of a disappointment. Don't get me wrong, we're spoiled with how many shows were just dumped onto the platform at once. However, it just doesn't feel right to have almost all of the classic Cartoon Network shows streaming, but not Dexter's Lab. I've got my fingers crossed that this was just a mistake, however, we will have to see. I also couldn't help but notice that we're still all anxiously awaiting the arrival of a pup named Scooby-Doo, as well as Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated and the new Scooby-Doo movies. Though a few variations of Scooby-Doo can be found on the platform currently, fans are still anxiously awaiting the goldmine of Scooby-Doo content and even more that is allegedly going to be added to the platform here in the near future. There's no word on exactly when more content is hitting Tubi, but you can rest assured that we will probably have a follow-up story as future developments unfold. However, that's all we have for you today, folks. What do you think? Do you have a bad feeling about this merger between Paramount and Warner Bros? Are you hyped for more shows to come to Tubi in the future? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Of course, a huge shout out with so much love is in order to my friends in the true 90s Kids tier on both Patreon and of course YouTube memberships. You all are the absolute best and I appreciate you more than words could ever say. Also, a massive personal shout out to my friend Pink Floyd Universe in the Sean's Best Friend tier on YouTube memberships. You're the greatest friend and I really appreciate you. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and give a little praise to the algorithm in hopes that it pushes this one to everyone else. As always, thank you all so much for watching and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Peace.
But wait, Grandpa Giraffe Shawn, that wasn't a very exciting story at all. Where's the action? Where's the danger?
Oh, you're telling me, whippersnapper? Why do you think I was trying to tell you the story of Predator 2 instead?